Hey there, Aries. This is Seven Scorpion Tarot, and I want to welcome you to tonight's reading. So, tonight, I want to look a little bit more into Chiron, which is retrograding through your sign. And the note I have here is for shadow identity. So, I want to get into that a little bit. Um, and like as I go forward doing more readings, I want to start to get into more topics that relate to my experience with post traumatic stress disorder. And those can be heavy, those can be dark, those can be complicated. I don't want to trigger anyone, but I also don't want to shy away from, my life, what's normal for me. Um, and I think that's very Aries, that's very first house. And that really helps explore that issue of identity, which is something that complex trauma really does a number on, especially if you start experiencing that within the home. So, within that environment where you're supposed to be developing a healthy sense of identity, instead, it's a source of trauma. Um, so, if these are not topics that work for you, like feel free to click away, no hard feelings, don't want to um, expose anybody into any topics they're not ready to delve into, but this is an open space for anybody who would like to listen, explore, and be kind. So, getting into this topic of Chiron and Aries, retrograding through Aries specifically, that is the wounded warrior. I feel like turning the corner into the god of war. That Nine of Wands energy of where in the Rider Waite you've got the individual with the bandage across their forehead leaning on a wand. But I feel like with this celestial placement, it's more of a staff than a wand, and it's becoming more of a weapon than a crutch. And anytime I read for Aries, of course, my favorite Aries comes to mind, Pedro Pascal. And it actually brought up some interesting thoughts about identity. Because I know it's easy to believe that everybody in Hollywood is greedy, they're putting on a show, they're actors, like, but they're all self serving. They've never, put another human being before themselves in their life. And it's anything good that they do is a PR stunt and yada, yada, yada. While that's technically possible, that 100% of a group is crappy, it's a bit cynical for my taste. Um, I understand the temptation for that with like all the P. Diddy stuff, and it seems like every day there's just something new about somebody in power or has some sort of influence or massive amount of wealth that they get caught doing something bad, and we realize just how far apart they are from us plebs, that consequences don't apply to them because they have money, which means the justice system only applies to the poor, which, ooh, that one hurts. Don't like how that feels. But from what I've seen about him, like, I like to believe that he's not that bad of a guy. I've never met him. I don't have any kind of read on him through a TV screen, but I want to believe that they can't all be that bad. Not every single one. And at a minimum, the causes that I see him putting out on his account are resulting in a net positive of supporting women, LGBT, immigrants, so on and so forth. Even if it's all BS, that message is still getting out to the rest of us. I don't think it's BS. That's just my personal opinion. But even if it is, we're getting a good message from him. So cool, whatevs. But it kind of got me to thinking, like, what would it be like to be in a position, when you're somebody who, at least for myself and the way he comes across as like having an anti-establishment heart, and me, I'm fully stepping into that's how I've been this whole time, but I just kind of snapped out of it within this system I'm dependent on to pay my bills, and it kind of is what it is. So, what would that be like to have a job that really is contingent on a carefully curated public persona? Because I'm in the background. I get to like be angry, put on headphones. I don't have to put on a brave face for anybody. The place where it did apply for me having to put on a brave face was in my home during my upbringing, during really critical years. And the part of my identity that I have been reclaiming is the word witch. And one of the things that I have done recently, I recently took some time off. I got some really solid time alone. I don't know if I saw another human. No, I had an appointment with my therapist. I did see one other human while I took time off. I really kept to myself though. Like I just needed space from the world just to like recenter, recalibrate, compile information of things I've been like reflecting on and working through. But the most important thing that has come out of that is that I declared a patron and I've declared myself to the Morrigan. And that's really important for me, somebody of Irish and Scottish descent, seeing how immigrants are being treated and just overnight how we've just like teleported back 4 years to now we're relying on the ACLU and the hearts of good honorable judges to go like, hey, you can't treat people like this. Like you can't just on a whim eliminate birthright citizenship. Like you can't do that. Uh and that just being in that situation, I mean observing it, like I'm not personally in it, just like vicariously as a citizen, watching that happen to other citizens. Ow. That just knowing the reason I'll never have to worry about that is because I'm white. The fury, the absolute fury I feel about that. And I take that really, really personally because of help wanted, no Irish need apply. And I know Ellis Island was a long, long time ago, but we are a country of immigrants. And it just breaks my heart to think of how scared they are. They have to be. And just all of the prejudice and assumptions and whatnot. And the point I'm getting at is when I was exploring witchcraft in my home, the reason I stopped was because I was being called names like Satanist and terrorist. Like less than a year after 9/11, after the other parent in the home was in DC on 9/11. Just a wretched way to treat a child. And that was by my own environment that I was supposed to be cared for unconditionally. It's a bit, different on that micro macro scale. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. But the god of war is going to have something to say about this. And not just the Morrigan, not just Aries, not just the Allfather, not just Odin. A lot of them. Like, it, we're playing with fire here. uh, literally, like what's going on in LA still that has got like pushed to the side. It's still actively going on. Like, oh my goodness gracious. There's so many things going on. And that I think is really representative of what's going on in the celestial weather right now, of what might be stirring within the self of that wounded warrior turning into the I will wound you warrior. Like the my how the turntables. Uh it just this is definitely the, and I'm certainly not advocating for any sort of harm to come to anyone, any type of violence, anything like that. Like modern warfare should be fought with words. That's my personal opinion. Uh I mean we certainly can. Like that can be done. We can put the injunctions, like stop the executive orders. I believe I did see that a judge today blocked the executive order for birthright citizenship and was like, no, this is unconstitutional. Like, don't even try it. This is egregious. Lawyer words, whatever. Um, but there's going to be a lot of shadow identity in that sort of thing. And the reason I'm kind of phrasing it like that is because of the retrograde. Because in the first house, it's very ego. Um, Retrograding, that's why I'm parking it over in the shadow, in that going through these really difficult, and quite frankly what the immigrants are going through right now is barbaric. uh Going through that is going to create really deep wounds in the shadow, and it's also going to create a place of strength, because that is going to create a seed of righteous anger. And that is where some of the most beautiful pieces of art have ever come from. We have incredible pieces of literature, um, like paintings and poetry and music, like heavy metal. That I made the angriest playlist I've ever made in like under a minute the other day. My most difficult mode in regards to PTSD is fight mode. And one of my most challenging symptoms within that mode is explosive anger. And that circuit was about to pop, and I was like, music. And I made a playlist really really fast. It was just like the angriest songs I could think of. I was just this many, like I spit out like 9 of them. I put it on the channel. I called it Lost the Plot is what I called that playlist. um and those first 9 songs I just spit them out super fast, and that 10th song was The Algorithm. And it's this beautiful, like, soft sopranic landing to death metal. 9 songs of death metal. Like, kind of need to smooth out that landing. So what I want to check out during this reading is we'll do the self shadow ego, and just get into like what might be churning in the shadow right now with everything going on just in the world with Chiron. Like my Chiron placement is in Cancer, and I think mine's retrograde too. That might be why I'm feeling so fiery right now. I mean, even though Cancer is a water sign, it's going to bring up the emotions, um, and then Aries will set them on fire. And I know those are heavy topics to open with, uh, but I'm hoping to kind of create a space just for other people who may have been shamed or guilted into silence, into things that, it is actually okay to talk about this stuff. And this is a place for it. So I'm going for the self for this shuffle. because there's some interesting layers to guilt, especially if there's any kind of like Catholicism in your background. I'm sure anybody with Irish heritage can relate to that. A lot of cultural stuff, and I'm not trying to knock anybody's beliefs. It's just been that was my experience with Catholicism. I think there's really important stories in the Bible, in both the New and the Old Testament. I think there's a lot of stuff to be learned from that. There's also the Book of Enoch, there's the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's the Gnostics. Really, really important document. Um, it just wasn't for me. And that's what makes this really a great country to live in. Like, things aside, religious liberty is why this country was founded. Like, there were several reasons, like the taxation without representation, but that in my mind, like, I would put religious liberty at the tippy top of that list. And it can't be, the importance of that can't be uh, understated, even if it's not something I believe in, not necessarily something I agree with, but your right to exercise that freedom, so important. And I've been noodling on how I'm going to modify my hearth into an altar. So that's like my little project. We've got the Knight of Pentacles, the slowest knight in the deck. Interesting. So a message of materials in the self. I almost want to interpret this as you've got a message from your higher self coming into the mundane. So maybe a wound you're ready to approach, something that's just been kind of lurking in the background that you might be able to, maybe you could have felt it, but you couldn't quite like put your finger on it. Like, that was difficult for me when I was understanding my relationship to the word triggered, of like, what does that actually mean? Like, clinically, colloquially, and also, this is not a replacement for medical advice. Talk to your doctor, talk to your therapist, etc. ad nauseum. Uh, but being triggered is a bit of a map. Like, it's a key to follow of this is where the wound is. Okay, like, what is it made of? What is it about? Where did it come from? And then you can start kind of deconstructing it and approaching it to the depth that you're able. That's a really important, I think, piece of that, is that you have to be ready to approach that wound. If you approach them too early, too fast, it's that too fast part. Um, they'll let you know. Those wounds will let you know, either through dreams or mood symptoms, things like that, like agitation, depression, anxiety, whatnot. Uh, but the crow has the pentacle in their mouth. So this feels like a little bit of like baby birding, like, here you go. Or maybe you're getting a reward for working through wounds. And like, I'm gonna start shuffling for the shadow. Like, certainly the healing of the wound is the reward, and like, you deserve nice things. And like, you deserve a treat, whether that's time off, like what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Um, or, don't forget to spend some of your paycheck on yourself, even if it's a candy bar. Like, even if it's just something that's a dollar something for you. I've certainly been in pretty rocky financial situations. Like, I'm not saying every month or every paycheck, however it works out for you, go spend all your money on yourself. You know, maybe spend a little bit more around your birthday or whatever holidays are important to you. Like I feel like I'm finally cool enough for a septum ring, so I think I might do that around my birthday. Uh, but other than that, like maybe is there a little bookstore that you've been meaning to check out? Uh, maybe go to the thrift store and just find something weird. That's what they're for, right? Like just weird stuff. Who knows what you're gonna find in the thrift store? Like that's kind of the beauty of it. That the things people bring in there, it's totally random. There's no like clean cut clinical, like we must have 500 items of yellow t-shirt 3. Like, no. I want like a frog that's a gnome smoking a joint or something. I don't know. Something weird. Ace of Cups. Ooh, in the shadow too. That's nice. So finding love for those wounds because you've got the lotus here. So um they bloom or bloom, blossom, whichever, from mud. So that's kind of what they're known for is their resilience, their ability to bloom in difficult situations. I still feel like I'm using the wrong word. Whatever. Oh, but see, look at these. Okay, here we go. So we've got like it looks like the crow is holding something in their mouth. This looks kind of like a sun, but it's a little circle, like a little disc, and it's a pentacle here. And in the Rider Waite, it's a dove diving down with the like the communion wafer, I think is what the intention is. Um, and there's a Greek letter on the cup, and I've seen some debate over is it an M or is it a W, and my interpretation is it's a prone capital sigma. I could probably get pretty in depth into that, but and the little droplets, the yods is the actual Hebrew letter of what's on that card. That actually does look like a lowercase sigma. So a lot of symbolism there. Um, but dropping the sun into the water, and then you've got another crow looking down at like where it's going to like plunk. So this almost seems like, I mean, you don't want to necessarily sit idly by. I'll start shuffling for the ego, but it almost seems like you don't need to do anything active at the moment. Like you don't need to take active steps towards stuff. Like maybe this is you're going into maintenance mode. Um, and maintenance mode being just like having a healthy breakfast, maintaining your sleep schedule, going on little walks in the park, stuff like that. But maybe right now, while this wound that you've transmuted is maybe like the healing is crystallizing and that's really settling into yourself and you're stepping into that next stage of just the the death and rebirth cycle of your on to the fool card. Um, just keep on keeping on. Stay the course of what you've been doing. Don't need to change directions right now. If something comes up and your discernment says yes, you do in fact need to change as a response to the circumstances that presented themselves, do that. Don't listen to some random tarot reader and make decisions based on that, based on what I'm saying on the internet, because I don't know what you're going through. I might give you remarkably bad advice without context. Let's see. So then the ego side, that'll include that ego part of the psyche and also the persona, the most external facing aspect. The lovers. Oh, nice. Ooh, so a choice. Okay. So kind of like what I was talking about. If your discernment says you need to make a different decision based on what you're doing right now, then do that. Uh, but on the in the ego aspect, because this would be Archangel Raphael, uh, for the Rider Waite. So the healer. So you may be presenting as healed. I don't see that as like a, okay, you're healed, you're done. You'll never have to do it again. You may be in the in between right now. I mean, I certainly hope if you've reached the end of a healing cycle that nothing bad ever happens to you again and you don't ever need to heal. Because I wish we lived in a utopia instead of a dystopia. But here we are. Uh, so maybe on the outside, you're looking very balanced, very unified. And this could very well be just the unification of self, like individuation. I was trying to think of another word. Com- Completion? Nope, that's not the word. I don't know. But maybe you've reached a new stage in individuation. Like you fully are stepping into your authenticity. It's like I've floundered back and forth of exploring spirituality and then atheism and then just being confused and then just being busy and then other stuff was happening and now I'm like, okay, I am back on my path. Like I'm stepping away from that religious trauma of my past. I'm accepting who I really am, who I've been trying to be this whole time, and unfortunately wasn't able to be that person until I stepped away from basically everybody I've ever known, which is a bummer. Uh, it is what it is. I'm gonna get an urban crow. And that, like, you probably can't tell from my affect, like, how hard that was, because it's been years now. Uh, but peace will always be the most expensive thing I'll ever have. And if that's a situation that you are in, I cannot recommend it enough. Therapist and a support group, both having that multi-factor structure to lean on as you go through a process like that, uh, and preparing yourself for the unwarranted, unsolicited opinions of others. I have lost friends because I estranged myself from family members. And I lost those friends without them ever taking it upon themselves to gather context of what happened. And if that's the way they gonna be, bye. See ya. You got to go. Uh I'm not mm-mm. I'm not playing like that. So I hope uh if any of you out there in the ethers find yourself in a similar situation, that you find a safe space here on the tarot channel of Misfit Toys. Anticipation. Ooh, okay. Interesante. Um, so the first thing that stuck out to me, if you can see that, got five kind of despondent looking crows in the background. And first thing that came to mind was Five of Cups. But this crow in the foreground looks very like chin high, like chest out, standing on business. Like maybe they're getting ready to caw, to say something. Uh Maybe these crows have been left behind from this crow's family structure, or this crow estranged themselves from these crows. I don't know. I don't know how crow family dynamics work, actually. But this looks like Big Ben in the background. So maybe the UK is important to you. Um, I don't know what these flowers are, but they're blue-ish. They look blue. And with the table setups, the little bistro chairs, I mean, like, I don't know why Paris came to mind, but that, like, just the little chair style, like, that's what it reminded me of. As if I've been there. Uh, Maybe the word bistro, I don't know. But is this crow waiting for an audience? Are you, or are you maybe completing a hibernation cycle that you had to go into to get balanced, to even things out, to heal some wounds, and you're waiting, not waiting, but you're finishing out that hibernation cycle before you emerge to your adoring fans. uh, but overall, really positive vibes from this for such a heavy placement of the wounded warrior and the god of war. Uh, and maybe there's some additional lessons in Chiron's and Aries' mythology in their stories for you. Because Chiron, the the eagle liver guy, Prometheus, uh, that that relationship of, I'm gonna have to actually refresh my own memory on that myth between Prometheus and Chiron, because it's ringing a bell that those are related. So maybe that there is additional, because I can't remember really anything else about that, that there's some sort of connection there. So maybe some homework for both of us. But overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.